Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. I know it has been a minute since I posted any content on my channel. I do apologize for that. If you don't follow me on TikTok and Instagram, but even if you don't follow me, I'm pretty sure you may have had some inclination. But I did recently give birth to my baby girl, and so I have been out of commission just trying to recoup and deal with life as a new first-time mom and dealing with a newborn baby. But I have had tons of questions on TikTok and Instagram and some messages from you guys here asking about my labor and delivery story. So today's video, we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to share all the information with you guys. It is going to be a little bit different than my normal traditional content on here, but hopefully you guys enjoy it and hopefully it can help out if you guys are a first-time mama out there. If you guys are new around here, welcome. My name is Andrea. I typically do videos all about beauty, sometimes some fashion, sometimes a little bit of luxury. If those are topics that interest you, I highly recommend you guys go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below and turn on the post notification bell button so you are aware every single time I post a new video. This is going to be a long video, so I definitely recommend grabbing a snack, grabbing some coffee, grabbing something to drink, and yeah, let's go ahead and get started. I want to start off this video by saying that my labor and delivery did not go as planned. Like, I had a set birth plan and that was completely thrown out the window just given the circumstances that occurred. And I do want to say that I think my labor and delivery story is not the norm. I personally don't know anyone that this has happened to. And I don't think that it's super common, but it is something that can sometimes happen. And I wish that somebody had told me that it is something that can happen, even if it's rare, just because I feel like I could have prepared myself a little bit better. My baby was actually given a due date of December 21st, 2022. I was very well aware that the first time baby is usually late. I don't know why my entire pregnancy I had this feeling that she was going to come early. Not like significantly early, but like she was going to come early. I don't know why. I should say too, my entire pregnancy I was considered low risk. I did not have gestational diabetes. I did not have gestational hypertension. I didn't have preeclampsia. I didn't have any illnesses, symptoms, pre-existing conditions, nothing like that. The pregnancy, I honestly couldn't complain. Obviously the first trimester is always the hardest. I had a lot of nausea and stuff like that, but it wasn't really bad. My entire pregnancy was really good. I was healthy, baby was healthy. I was working out up until 30 weeks. So everything was great, honestly. I honestly couldn't complain. So fast forward to December time, I decided to go on maternity leave a week before baby was supposed to come because I had this feeling that she was going to come early, and I also wanted to like get Christmas stuff situated and just have everything ready that we needed to have ready for her. As we got closer to her due date though, I did start getting nervous and anxious and frustrated that she wasn't here yet. So I hit 40 weeks on the 21st and I went into my doctor's appointment for my 40 weeks, and he asked me if I had any signs of labor. I was feeling pressure, but honestly I hadn't felt really anything really out of the ordinary. Even the pressure that I was feeling, it wasn't like a lot. So we talked about the possibility of having to get an induction if the baby doesn't come, you know, within the next couple of days. The doctor was fantastic. I really wanted a doctor that didn't push me to have a C-section or an induction or intervene with medicine. Besides the epidural, I was definitely going to get the epidural unless it was absolutely necessary. I wanted to try to labor naturally and try to deliver vaginally if I could. Like I said, with medication, with the epidural, I wasn't going to do a natural birth, but I really wanted to try to get that whole labor and delivery experience. So at my checkup at the 40 weeks, we checked how dilated I was, and I was completely undilated, like zero progress, zero effaced, meaning that I wasn't showing signs of going into labor. I live in Minnesota, so that weekend we also were supposed to get a huge snowstorm. So on top of the fact that I was already kind of dealing with feelings of like being sad that she may not be here for Christmas, I kept hearing nonstop on social media, this is the worst storm we've ever seen. Make sure you got food because everybody's gonna be like at a standstill. So I was really concerned that it's like, okay, if she comes a couple days late, what if she comes during the snowstorm? They're gonna be like short staffing at the hospital. My doctor's already gonna be on vacation, so he's not even gonna be here. Who's gonna deliver? Are we gonna be able to make it to the hospital? You know, what if something happens? And I was just kind of like getting anxious about that. I will say And while everybody means well, I was also getting very overwhelmed by the amount of people that were asking me daily when baby was coming. But literally every single day that week, we're like, is she here yet? Is she here yet? And I was getting constant text messages about it. I don't know if the stress had anything to do with like me not showing or progressing any signs of labor, but I was very anxious about all that. Saturday was going to be Christmas, and we pretty much accepted that she wasn't going to be here for Christmas. But that was really hard. I had kind of like, I don't want to cry. It was the Friday before Christmas, and me and my husband pretty much accepted that she wasn't going to be here for Christmas. We were very upset because, you know, we had pictured that she was going to be here by Christmas, even if she was a couple days late. Her due date was the 21st. Maybe she came the 23rd or the 24th. We had bought her Christmas stuff to do like the first Christmas, and it wasn't gonna happen. So when that didn't happen, we just decided to spend time with family. Christmas came and went, and then it was Monday the 26th. And I had another doctor's appointment with the other doctor that was gonna be taking care of me while my OB and doctor was out of the office. I went in that morning, and if you've never been pregnant or go to the doctors when you're pregnant, they check your blood pressure every single time you go. My entire pregnancy was really good. I never once had high blood sugar. And I don't know if it was like the stress of everything that weekend, but when I went in that Monday the 26th, my blood pressure spiked. It was like 150 something, like ridiculously high. So the doctor was concerned that I had developed gestational hypertension, and that can lead to like preeclampsia or like complications during birth, extra monitoring, and if I do have high blood pressure, they would have to give me medication during delivery and stuff. So she was concerned that I had developed, you know, gestational hypertension. So she had some blood work ordered to make sure that I didn't have preeclampsia or anything serious, but she did ask me to come back that same day, but in the afternoon. Thankfully, I only lived like 15 minutes from my clinic. So she had asked me to come back at 5, like have the whole day pass through, and then do another blood pressure test, regardless of whether the results came back that I had preeclampsia or not, just to rule out or to confirm that it was hypertension. 28th, that Wednesday, I was going to be 41 weeks. And before my doctor and OB went on vacation, we talked about that if I hit 41 weeks, that I was going to do an induction that Wednesday. So the doctor that was watching me recommended that if my blood pressure came back high again in the afternoon, or if that my test came back that I had preeclampsia, that Monday, right after I went to the clinic, I should just go straight to the hospital and start the induction, because I was going to start it 2 days later anyway on that Wednesday at 41 weeks. And what they didn't want is that they waited 2 days and then something developed that wasn't there on Monday, and then on Wednesday, you know, there could have been something that could have been avoided if we would have started it. My test results, thankfully, there was no preeclampsia, no issues, no protein in urine, nothing alarming in my blood. But I did go back to do the second blood pressure test, and although my blood pressure did decrease, it was still high. So the doctor said that she was concerned that I was developing gestational hypertension, and so that day we were gonna go to the hospital and get induced. So we got to the hospital around 7 p.m. We got checked in. The doctor that was on call kind of walked us through the induction process. So the induction process, there's several different methods that they can use to try to get your body into labor if you're not laboring naturally. Some are non-invasive methods that they use, and some are invasive if you're not progressing. And so she walked us through it. They did tell us from the beginning that it was going to be a long process. Usually inductions take anywhere from 2 to 3 days, but we were very hopeful. We were very excited because they're like, you know, in 2 to 3 days, you're going to be walking out of here with a baby, regardless of whether you go into labor naturally or we have to induce you. Started me on the first method of induction. It's called Cytotec. It's like these little pills that they insert down there, and they insert it every 3 hours, and there's 4 of them. So it's like a 12-hour clock. And what that's supposed to do, it's supposed to ripen your cervix, open it up so that you can start, you know, dilating. Maybe you can like mosey on through there. Did check, because they check before they put the pill there to see if I was dilated at all or anything. I was still at 0. Like they weren't even able to do a membrane sweep because I was just not dilated at all, not effaced at all. I stayed at the hospital because obviously once I get checked in, I can't leave. We slept there, the 12 hours passed, and I think they inserted it at like 9, so at 9 a.m. the next day, they checked the progress to see how far along I was dilated and how my cervix was ripening. I hadn't progressed at all. So it was still 0, not effaced, not dilated, not anything, and my cervix was still really, really tight. And the next thing that they did was insert this, I can't remember what it's called, but it's something that they insert down there. It's also not invasive or hurts or anything. It's just kind of like you have a tampon in there that has medication, and that's supposed to help. It's like a more intense version of the little pills, and that's supposed to help open it up and progress and everything like that. Inserted that at 1. So I was at the hospital. This whole time I was trying to like walk, do the bouncy ball, do squats, just get moving to like start labor, or like, you know, help labor start in any way I could to like move this along faster, and hopefully it worked. I had told myself, or started telling myself, that this was going to work, that my body was going to react to it, that even though it didn't react the first time and I wasn't showing signs of labor, that this was going to work, that, you know, I just needed to trust the process. And I genuinely believed that, and I genuinely was more positive about it, and just excited to kind of get to the point where they could check and see how far along I had, you know, progressed. 1 a.m. They came and checked. I was not progressing at all. I still was not effaced at all. I wasn't dilated at all, and my cervix was still really tight where they couldn't do a membrane sweep. And at that point I was very, very upset, just because it had already been a full 24 hours that we had checked in, and I hadn't progressed at all. And I guess what was a little bit more frustrating in the moment was that I didn't have a reason or an answer why I didn't progress. You know, there was no reason to be like, oh, it's because you have gestational diabetes, or it's because you have endometriosis, or it's because, you know, this medication you're taking is affecting that. There was like, I was perfectly healthy. Ideally, we were like the perfect candidate, I would have thought, for something to like keep moving forward, or easily, because, you know, there wasn't anything that was preventing us from moving on to the labor stage. And so when they told me that I hadn't progressed, that was really hard. I mentioned that in induction, you know, they have non-invasive methods, and then they have invasive methods. So methods that are a little bit more intense, more painful, and that, you know, they need to start doing things to your body to kind of get it up and running. And another part that really upset me was that the next option after that was to try something called a balloon. And this is the bad part of social media as well. I had seen way too many TikTok videos about how the balloon was extremely painful. They like compared it to like a torture device, and like that they refused it, and it was painted like super, super bad and super negatively, that I was really upset. And I honestly was scared to like, you know, nothing was working to progress, then now I had to do something that was going to be extremely, extremely painful. And I was very concerned whether I was going to be able to handle it or not. At that point, it was like, do the balloon or do the C-section. The doctor was able to do the balloon then and there. So they gave me drugs for the insertion of the balloon, and that's usually the part that people say is the most intense or the most painful part. So when they inserted it, obviously was not comfortable, but thankfully it wasn't excruciatingly painful like I thought it was going to be. They inserted the balloon. Again, the balloon has to stay on for like 12 hours. So this was another kind of like thing that was like tripping you up. We were already there, like, you know, Tuesday night and still zero progress, 24 hours, and now we got to stay an extra day, you know, and keep going with all of this stuff to try to induce labor. Those following like 3 hours after that were painful, because you just feel so much pressure. The balloon is literally like a balloon that they insert in there. It's like 2, I think they go on each side. Every 3 hours they come in and they like inflate it manually with some water. So it's manually like trying to open you up. And that's why it's so painful and you have a lot of pressure. I could not sleep. I was tossing and turning, and every position I moved to was painful. But again, it wasn't excruciatingly painful like TikTok had made it seem. Morning when I woke up, I felt good. I wasn't feeling pressure at all, and so in my mind I was like, this worked. This absolutely worked. This time I did progress, but I progressed to 2 centimeters. In order to start active labor, you have to get to 6 centimeters, and then at 9.5 or 10 is where you push. So we had to go from like a grape, which is like 1 centimeter, to like the size of a bagel, which is 10 centimeters. And I had only progressed 2 centimeters in 36 hours it was. That was some progress, but it definitely wasn't the progress I wanted to hear. The next thing that they were going to do was start me on Pitocin and try to break my water. They were hoping for is that with the Pitocin and breaking my water, that would kind of kickstart my body to be like, oh, we're going into labor. My cervix was soft, but it wasn't completely ready. And like I said, I wasn't really dilated. I did the Pitocin, and how Pitocin works, or at least how they explained it to me, was that they give you 2 units each 30-minute intervals, and you go up to 20 units of Pitocin. You can go up to 30, but they need doctor's approval, and you have to be in good health in order to do that if you genuinely need it to like keep progressing. So I was nervous for it, and I was kind of scared because again, I had heard it was really painful, and this is like the actual contractions. These are labor contractions that we're gonna start feeling. But I was ready for it. And so they started me on Pitocin at like 4, and every 30 minutes they were increasing it. I get moments of like remembering how I felt in that moment. And I think that's what makes it all really emotional. Great, I feel like I smeared my makeup now. So I started the Pitocin, and when I tell you that I did so good and I was so proud of myself, looking back at it, I really was shocked myself even at how well I did with that, because we got to 16 units before I started really just like in a lot of pain. The entire time we were there, I was like breathing, I was sitting on the bouncy ball, I was stretching, I was swaying, I was moving side to side. I was doing everything that I had been taught in like my pregnancy delivery class, and I feel like I handled it really, really well, and I was really proud of myself for doing it all that way without having to get an epidural or anything. And it wasn't anything against like anyone else who gets it before then. I was just, you know, really proud of myself that I was like doing everything possible to make sure that we were progressing in some way. At 16, they offered me fentanyl and that I could take hourly to help take the edge off, and that was amazing. That worked fantastic, and I was feeling really good. And then we were at 20, and so what the doctor wanted was for me to stay at 20 for about 2 hours until my contractions were 2 to 3 minutes apart each, because that's typically how you start progressing and how you start dilating and when we go into labor. So we were doing really good. We were probably an hour and a half in. Obviously the entire time they monitor you there to make sure you're good and the baby's good, and at 1 hour and a half the baby's heart spiked. So they were scared that she wasn't handling the Pitocin and that she could, you know, be breech or something can happen to her heart. They dropped it back down all the way to 10 to keep me kind of like contracting, but like very mildly, for about an hour. And then the doctor came and checked on my progress to see if I had dilated after the Pitocin, and I dilated 0.5 centimeters. So after the 20 units and after like almost 3 hours, I had only progressed 0.5 centimeters. So what the doctor then did was she broke my water because I had a really good health and I didn't have any conditions, and they were monitoring my hypertension, but it still hadn't gotten to the point where I needed medication. The doctor wrote a script that we could go to 30 units of Pitocin. So they kept me at 10 for like maybe an hour, then they broke my water, and then she said we were going to start a second round of Pitocin, and this time it was going to be all the way to 30, hopefully get my body just dilated to where it needed to. And this entire time I do want to say that the doctors and the nurses and staff were very understanding. They were very compassionate. They could tell we were frustrated, and they were trying to explain everything and just be super patient with us, which I really appreciated. And they did offer me the epidural. Like they even said, like, you don't have to suffer through the Pitocin. You can get the epidural, you know, now. Problem is when you get the epidural, at least at my hospital, you are bedbound, because you obviously can't feel anything. So you're bedbound. I'm pretty sure you can't eat either. Maybe just drink water. And I've heard that it also can slow down labor. So if I had only progressed to 2.5 centimeters in, you know, almost a full 3 days, and if I had the epidural now, how long would it take me to get to 4 centimeters and to 6, where we actually need to push? So I made the decision to not get the epidural. I wanted to see how far I could make it. So then they started upping the Pitocin. This is the second time, or the second round that I'm on Pitocin. And I was at 10, and then they started upping it again. And this time I did notice that it was a lot harder. It was a lot more painful than the first time that I had the Pitocin in my system. And I think it was because I had already gone through, you know, the pain. My body had already felt it, and now I needed to go through it again. So I think I was tired, and I think my body was tired because this time it was a lot more painful. And so I was at like 14 units, 16 units for 15 minutes, and I started sweating. And I was sweating so much, I was like clenching onto the bed. I was shaking. I had thrown up, and it was really painful. The doctor was going to come and do a cervix check at 20 units once we progressed to the 20 units the second time, before they, you know, start upping past 20 units to 30. Got to 18 units, and 18 was excruciatingly painful. It was the most intense pain I have been in my life physically. It hurt so bad. I could no longer stand. I was on the bed just like hoping and begging that like the pain would stop because it was really bad. It was so bad to the point that like my fentanyl worn off, because you can only get it every hour, and they were about to come in and up it to 20 units, and I told them that they had to stop. Like, I wanted the cervix check now because I couldn't take it anymore. So they came and they did the cervix check, and after breaking my water and after almost 20 units the second round of Pitocin, I still hadn't progressed at all. I was still at 2.5 centimeters dilated, and my cervix just wasn't ripened enough yet for active labor. So at that point, that was really hard, because we had been there now at this point, 3 full days. Hadn't progressed at all, and pretty much everything that they tried had failed. My body just wasn't showing signs of laboring. So at that point, my husband and I talked about realistically having a C-section, because the pain that I was in was unbearable. And, you know, the only other option was to keep going on the Pitocin and get an epidural, but who knows how long it would have taken to progress. I could have been there another 30 hours trying to keep progressing before I even had a push. Like, we hadn't slept in like 24 hours. How I would have to find the strength and the energy to push the baby out somehow. And just the more we talked about it, the more unrealistic it sounded. And the more we talked about it, the more we came to the realization that we had to do a C-section at that point. So I called the doctor in, and we told her that we wanted to do a C-section. She came in, we explained to her everything we had tried. She did a cervix check too, just to confirm. And she was like, although I feel like, you know, you're closer to 3 centimeters, not really just 2.5, she did pretty much agree that, you know, we tried everything and that it was the same thing. There was no guarantee that we could be here another 30 hours more, and there was no guarantee that we were going to progress. And thankfully, I hadn't eaten because I was in so much pain earlier. I hadn't eaten anything, and she didn't have any one that she was working on right now. So as soon as I signed those papers, they brought in everyone else. You know, the nurses came in to set me up for an IV. They gave Eric the gown and everything to change into. The anesthesiologist came in to explain the spinal tap for me and everything. And so they prepped me for a C-section. It felt like literally just like 10 minutes into the surgery, and the doctor goes, okay, here we go, we're gonna pull out baby. Out of nowhere, I just suddenly felt this like huge like feeling of like pressure just like releasing from my body, and I heard my baby. When she screamed, she opened her mouth and water got in her mouth, and so NICU had to come in, the neonatal intensive care unit had to come in just to make sure that she didn't swallow water in her lungs and everything, and to make sure that she was okay. Everything worked out fine for the C-section. It was honestly the worst best case scenario. Worst because, you know, I didn't want to have to do a C-section, but best case scenario because there was no complications with me in the C-section. It wasn't breech or an emergency C-section. Everybody took their time. We felt safe, we felt good, and I felt fine and good the entire time. Because baby had screamed and she had swallowed some water, they had to take her to the NICU. So we weren't able to hold her right away. As soon as like they took her to NICU and I realized that she was okay, I just kind of like passed out. I literally just fell asleep. And for the first time in like, I felt like I don't know, like 27 hours or something like that, I finally was able to like rest and just sleep, because I felt like I'd gone through so much physically and emotionally that I was just not prepared for. And just finally I was just feeling like I could just relax and rest and everything was going to be fine. We just started recovering for a C-section. And honestly, after everything I had been through and the induction and like the Pitocin and everything like that, the recovery for the C-section wasn't that bad. I was able to like walk a little bit. It wasn't as excruciatingly painful as, you know, everything else had been. Third day, they actually discharged me. So I was discharged on New Year's Eve on the 31st. Baby on the second day, even though she didn't have anything major wrong with her, she had gotten a feeding tube, and so she got lazy and she didn't want to eat by mouth, so they couldn't discharge her right away. They wanted to keep her for an extra day or two just to make sure that, like, you know, she's eating. That following Monday she was discharged. I think for me, I was mentally prepared that it was going to be physically painful. I didn't realize how emotionally and psychologically painful it was going to be for me, because I felt like my body had failed me. I felt like what was wrong with me. I don't think it helped that I didn't know anyone personally who had gone through a failed induction. Like the TikTok algorithm knows, after I had my failed induction, I just started getting a lot more videos and seeing a lot more videos that happens. It's not super common, but it does happen. And the more I talk about it, the better I feel. It also helped that after the C-section took place, the doctor did tell me, you know, that we made the right call. After she looked, you know, she said that my cervix was slightly tilted, literally just the tiniest bit, but obviously that makes a huge difference, and that she didn't know if we were gonna progress if we had kept going. So we had made the right decision. That made me feel better that it wasn't something that I did or could have done to prevent it. We literally tried everything, and I endured so much to try to deliver naturally, but it just didn't take place. The overall best thing was obviously that she's healthy and that I'm healthy. There was really zero issues with her. She was never in the danger zone. Neither was I, and obviously that's the only thing you can ask for. The more I talk about it, the better I feel about it, and I have gotten to a place where, you know, I'm accepting of it, and I'm no longer like mad at myself for what happened. It was out of our control. I am now, I think at the time you're going to see this video, 3.5, 4 weeks postpartum. Since 2 weeks I did absolutely nothing. My husband was a rock star, and he literally did every single thing while I was in bed, and I would walk around a little bit, take care of baby a little bit, but really nothing too crazy. I'm just feeling so much better. I'm feeling like back to normal, and that's almost frustrating because I want to go and do stuff. I have been able to go to like dinners and stuff, but nothing too hard or strenuous. Honestly, really can't complain. I know people have a lot more dangerous and more traumatic birth stories, but for me, I just never in my wildest dreams did I think that that would be our labor and delivery story. And so it was just a lot to handle emotionally. After how hard everything was and everything that happened, I would without hesitation do it all over again for her. And yeah, that's our labor and delivery story. If you are a first-time mama, don't be nervous. You are a lot stronger than you think you are. You are gonna surprise yourself. It honestly can't be as bad as my story. And I just hope that everything goes smooth for you guys. We plan to be hopefully a little bit more active on there. Like I said, I got a newborn at home, so we'll see how much filming and editing she allows me to do, but hopefully we can get into a better routine. And yeah, if you guys want to see pictures of baby and stuff like that, make sure you guys follow me on Instagram and TikTok. If there's any other content in specific you guys want to see, leave it down below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye.